Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and welcome to my ultimate guide to Seele. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the Quantum Hunt unit, covering skills, rotations, gear, Eidolons, and of course light cones. Everything will be covered with numbers, and you guys are going to know every single tip and trick you need to master this character. We'll also throw in a few teams, which suit Seele excellently as well at the end. Seele is one of the best single target characters in the game, sporting massive damage numbers and great scaling multipliers, but she's also by far one of the best hyper carry characters as well. A hyper carry is essentially a character who wants to be supported by 3 other characters in their team. Very few characters can make this work, but Seele can thanks to her insane damage as well as sweeping potential with her talent Resurgence, making her one of the funnest and most potent characters on release in Star Rail for 1.0. Seele's typing is Quantum, meaning she won't be as good in the early game as Quantum is a controlling element. She will be effective at breaking enemies' toughness bars and delaying them, but in terms of bringing damage from break, this isn't the best element for it. But in the end game, when you start getting to level 70 to 80 and break is no longer as important, Quantum becomes one of the best elements to use, as it will give you more control over the battle, and Seele is going to see her stocks rise as you get higher and higher in your account level. Seele has a pretty standard basic attack, but you can upgrade it using one of her trace's rippling waves later on in progression. With this upgrade, Seele's basic will now advance forward her action by 20%. This can be particularly nice if you have to be forced into using the basic as you don't have enough skill points for the skill. In addition to that, in Seele's rotation, if you can guarantee a kill with the basic instead of a skill, it can actually be a pretty good idea to use the basic instead, as you will get to your next action faster, and that will be covered more in depth in the rotation section. As with all basics, Seele's basic attack will do 1 break unit of damage to the enemy's toughness bar and generate 20 energy. Seele's skill, Sheathed Blade, is a single target quantum damage nuke, but it also grants her 25% increased speed as a buff for 2 turns. Later, with an Eidolon, this can stack up to 2 times, but baseline, you can only get 1 stack. You should almost always be trying to use Sheathed Blade as her primary action spender instead of the basic, as it does substantially more damage. In addition to that, Sheathed Blade should always be used at the very beginning of combat to establish the increased speed buff, and with the Eidolon, use it twice in a row to make sure that you get 2 stacks and maintain it. Seele's skill will do 2 break units of damage, so double that of her basic, and generate 30 energy. Seele's ultimate Butterfly Flurry will cause her to enter the buff state. The buff state is an increase to her damage across the board for 1 turn. After that, it will then deal a massive amount of quantum damage. It's worth noting that the buff state comes into effect before you deal the damage, so that big ultimate is going to be increased by the buff state. Now, of course, ultimates are considered bonus actions. Bonus actions do not use up turn duration on buffs. So after activating the ultimate, you will have the buff state for the next turn that you have. So you could, for example, use Butterfly Flurry outside of her turn, and then the next turn you get, you will have that increased damage from activating the ultimate for your next action. Seele's ultimate deals 3 break units of damage, and after using it, you will regenerate 5 energy. Seele's ultimate costs 120 energy, so that's 4 skills or 3 skills and 2 basics. However, it's worth noting that killing enemies as well as taking damage also regenerate energy, so it's possible that you may be able to shorten that rotation a little bit, especially if you're getting a lot of kills. Seele's talent is Resurgence, and it is by far her most defining feature, and quite frankly, it's a complete blast to play with. First and foremost, let's cover the buffed state. So as mentioned in her ultimate, Seele has a mechanic which allows her to enter an increased damage state. It's essentially a self-buff. Now, you can see here exactly what that is on the talent, and leveling it up will increase its potency. Whenever the buff state is mentioned, this is what it is mentioning. It says here, while in the buff state, Seele increases her damage by 60% for 1 turn. Using the ultimate essentially enables this buff. Similarly, the technique, which we'll get to, also enables this, as well as a few other things on her kit. The second part of Resurgence is by far the more powerful one. Whenever Seele slays an enemy, she will gain a bonus action and enter the buffed state. This bonus action is a true bonus action, meaning it will not consume any turn orders on buffs like Bronya's buff or Ting Yang's, and it will also be independent of the turn order in terms of counting down for Seele's next action, which makes it incredibly powerful. The catch is though that you cannot gain Resurgence again while already gaining another bonus action. So you couldn't, for example, use a skill, kill an enemy, gain an extra turn, kill another enemy. It wouldn't work that way. You can only gain it once per action that you have used to kill something. However, you can stagger them. So you could go skill, kill an enemy, use Resurgence, and then do damage, and then ultimate, kill an enemy, gain Resurgence, and then kill or do another damage. That does work. The final note on her talent is that one of her traces, Lacerate, actually grants 20% quantum penetration to the buffed state, which is very common in her kit, and is one of the most powerful damaging stats in the game. This only further pushes her as a late game monster and hyper carry target, meaning she will be very effective in very late game scenarios. Seele's technique, Phantom Illusion, will give you stealth in the overworld for 20 seconds, allowing you to avoid those pesky enemies and bypass everything in something like Simulated Universe. Very handy. In addition to that, it'll also cause her to enter the buffed state for one action while attacking an enemy in stealth. It's worth noting that if you activate stealth and then swap your team into another team member, you will lose the stealth and waste the technique point. The best way to use this is to completely buff your team with all of your techniques, switch to Seele last, activate Phantom Illusion, and then start the battle. Level up Seele's abilities in the following order. Start with the skill and max it out for her current ascension level. Next, max out the ultimate, and then follow that up with the talent. If you have spare materials and you find yourself using the basic attack a lot in your team composition, you can also consider leveling up the basic, but most of the time in a well-balanced team, Seele is predominantly going to be using her skill. However, the basic can come in handy, sometimes in the right situations. For her passives, level up her Lacerate passive first and prioritize it. It's a massive damage increase. The last two abilities here on Seele are not as impactful, but you can grab them as soon as you have the materials in order to access the damaging nodes behind them, which is going to give her a substantial boost. However, it's worth noting, early on in progression, these are not mandatory. The only one you should prioritize is Lacerate. And of course, any small damaging nodes you can get is a bonus, and then pick up these other ones later on when you have more materials that you don't need for the rest of your team. Now that we understand all of Seele's kit, let's get into the most important part, her rotation and how she plays out in game. In the endgame of Star Rail, most fights last on average 8 cycles in the Forgotten Hall, the hardest game mode in the game. This is equivalent to 8 turns in other games. And over those 8 turns, due to Seele's exceptionally high base speed and her increased speed from her skill passive, she is on average going to get 12 actions. To unlock her full damage potential as a main damage or hyper carry, you're going to want to use 12 skills in each of those actions, meaning she's a pretty expensive character to run in terms of her skill point consumption. Normal characters generally use like 8 in an 8 cycle fight, so Seele consuming 12 is 50% higher. Now in addition to that though, one of Seele's Eidolons actually alters this rotation more. She can gain 2 stacks of her speed buff instead of 1. With this active, she will gain 14 actions in an 8 cycle fight instead of 12, further exacerbating her high cost. In addition to that though, Seele also has her Resurgence triggers. The Resurgence triggers are also going to ask her to consume even more skill points if you want her full potential. Now it is possible to use her basic every now and then and drastically reduce her cost if you can get the last hit with those basics on the enemies that you are targeting. However, you're going to want to be accounting for a high skill point consumption when building teams and factoring in Seele's rotation. As mentioned earlier, Seele's incredibly powerful ultimate costs 120 energy. In a standard fight, if you're not getting any kills or getting a lot of damage dealt to you, you're going to need to use 4 skills, or alternatively 3 skills and 2 basics. If you're able to string together some kills, this will alter her rotation slightly, but most of the time you should be aiming for using 4 skills per ultimate. In order to understand Seele and truly unlock her full potential, we first need to understand what a bonus action is. Now, I mentioned earlier that a bonus action is what the ultimate is considered, as well as what her resurgence triggers are considered. Now, I also talked about earlier the fact that bonus actions do not affect the turn counter on buffs. Right now, if we take a look at Seele, she has 2 turns remaining on Bless and 1 turn remaining on this increased damage buff. If we use the ultimate, basically, we're going to take a look and see what happens to these buffs. Let's use the ultimate here and see what happens to the buffs. So we're going to use the bonus action here, and we will go ahead and spectate what is going on here. So we go back in and we take a look, we can see here that the changes are nowhere. We do not have any changes to the buffs. We still have 2 turns of Bless and 1 turn of the damage increase. Now, the reason this is important as this bonus action is the same on Resurgence, meaning her Resurgence does not actually change the turn duration on buffs, meaning she can string together massive chains of a combo while still retaining all the buffs which she has been buffed with, meaning she gets way more value from being buffed than other characters due to her Resurgence triggers and the way that she functions. The next thing to understand about Seele is the concept of an action window. An action window is essentially a window of time in which buffs exist per action. If I was to use a skill here and attack this enemy and they did not die, then all of my buffs would move forward 1 turn after the action is complete and the next character's action begins. Now, if I was to kill this enemy here though, we'll take a look and see what happens when I enter the Resurgence state. So we'll kill this enemy here. We can return to my buffs here, and we can see that I still retain them with the exact same turn amount here. And the reason for this is that I'm still in the same action window as the skill was before. Meaning that if you can string together as many Resurgence or ultimates as you can within the 1 action window of a skill, you can retain all of those buffs pretty much indefinitely as long as you're able to continue to operate in that window. Alright, now that we have a full understanding of the mechanics behind Seele, let's put this all into practice and pull off one of her most powerful combos. Okay, so generally you're going to want to play Seele in some pretty buff heavy teams as she's able to take advantage of them so well. Here we're going to activate Ting Young and give her an attack boost and a blessing. Then we're going to give her some energy as well as more damage here. Next up, we're going to use Bronya here to use on a basic attack to get some skill points, and we're going to need them. And now we're going to complete Seele's combo here. So we have a ton of buffs on her and we are ready to go. Plenty of buffs here, and we're going to use a action window as we discussed earlier to make sure that we retain all of these buffs indefinitely across a full combo. So here, we are going to identify this enemy here as one that we can kill. And as I know that I'm going to kill it, I'm going to perform what's called a snapshot immediately as the skill connects in order to execute the combo correctly. We'll talk about this a little bit more in a second here. But here I go. I'm spamming the 1 key, and that is going to allow me to execute the combo effectively. Now, I have the ultimate active. Let's take a look at those buffs. You can see here that they all still have full duration active. We are still within that actions window. We are now going to kill this enemy here with the ultimate. And here we go. Down he goes. Okay, check the buffs. We are still now fully within the window and there is no changes. We still have the full damage buff duration. We now have a Resurgence trigger. So we've used 2 actions so far, a skill and an ultimate. Nothing too crazy here. We're now going to target this enemy here and get rid of them. Now we'll quickly check the buffs again, and we still have full duration on all of the buffs. Now, we're still within the same window, but somehow Seele has another action. This is what's called the double Resurgence combo. It's something that you can pull off if you have very precise inputs when you actually attack the enemy and you're sure they can kill them. But it is by far the most optimal way to play Seele in terms of her combo. You can see here that we almost have another full ultimate and we have all of our buffs. Only after the 4th action here in the window will the window end and all of the buffs activate and tick in terms of their turn order. Seele's turn has now ended, the combo has finished, and you can see here that all of the buffs have advanced action forward 1 turn. That is the most effective Seele combo. Now let's break down that exactly so you guys can do it too. Alright, so you've decided you want to use the double Resurgence combo. So when is it actually useful though? So this combo is only relevant when you have a guaranteed ultimate ready to go and you are sure you are about to kill the enemy which you are about to hit. So in this scenario here, my skill is absolutely going to give me my ultimate, and I am guaranteed to kill this enemy here. In this scenario, you want to use the double resurgence combo, as it is going to be the most effective way to use her. However, if I, for example, had no energy here and I was just playing and I knew I was going to get a kill, you wouldn't have to worry about any of this, as the ultimate isn't in the picture right now, and you can play her normally. But if you want to use this combo, here's how to do it. So you've identified an enemy that you are positive you are going to kill. And as you know you're going to kill them, you are going to hit the skill input and basically start the attack, whether it's a basic or a skill. And as she is traveling towards the enemy, you are going to begin spamming the ultimate button. And that is going to queue the ultimate up before you kill them and grant you the ultimate before the resurgence trigger. The reason this works is because the energy gain associated with a hit is actually broken up into multiple parts. So you can actually queue the ultimate halfway through the skill dealing damage. Let's take a look and see that again. There you go, it's queued. Now I get the ultimate and I will get my double resurgence triggers, and I will be getting that extra 30 to 40 energy when playing my Seele here. So you can see I ended my combo and I almost have the ultimate ready again already, which is incredibly powerful, and I have all my window of buffs here. Very, very strong indeed. Alright, so we're back in the same scenario as earlier. Now, what was I talking about with snapshotting energy? Well, I'm going to show you guys what happens when you don't do what I just talked about, and you guys can kind of understand what's going on here. So if I was to use the skill here and I didn't spam 1 at the exact right moment to activate the ultimate, things play out very, very differently here. So let's go ahead and kill this enemy. The ultimate is now active. Even if I activate it though, I cannot use it, as the resurgence has already activated and we are already in a bonus action. The bonus action of resurgence has started to come before the ultimate, so we cannot gain access to the ultimate. It is already queued up, but we can't get to it. The reason this is bad is that we now have to use an action here, and we're already capped on energy. This is not good. It means we are wasting 30 energy. So we're now going to have to kill an enemy here, and that's just not going to work out so great. So now we get the ultimate, and now we get to do things here and get the ultimate kill, and then we get another action here, but it's not ideal as we lost 30 energy. Now, how come the other combo works? Why does it work if you're able to kill 2 enemies in a row and then get 2 resurgence procs? And that's because resurgence stacks. If you kill an enemy with a skill and then kill an enemy with the ultimate right after, you will actually get both of those resurgences queued up. And that is why we use the resurgence combo, and then we get the extremely high energy increase associated with it. The final thing to note when playing Seele is that you should almost always go for a resurgence reset whenever it is possible, as you will get the extra action as well as the killing blow energy, so overall you will be getting closer to your ultimate, which is a massive part of your damage. In addition to that, whenever the ultimate is ready, make sure you activate it, as it will give you the buffed state for your next skill, and also if you kill an enemy with that, you'll also further accelerate her rotation, meaning that you'll just be able to get through everything faster. Seele is not only a single target beast, but as you can quite clearly see, she has some of the highest potential to completely wipe fields of enemies in one single turn. Alright, now that we understand Seele's combo potential, let's get into her gear. Relics, light cones. We're going to understand exactly which ones are best for Seele, and we're going to refer to a bunch of theory crafting and calculations done by the community in order to understand exactly what is best. Everything we're about to discuss is at level 80 with level 10 traces. So if your Seele isn't maximum level yet, there may be a few alterations you can get here to increase performance a little bit. But when you get to the end game, you can be pretty sure that this is going to be pretty close to exactly what you're going to be looking for in terms of maximizing her potential. So in the relic department, look for the following on each of your pieces as the primary stat. Of course, on the helmet and the gloves, you're going to be grabbing flat HP as well as flat attack. On the boots, you're going to be looking for percentage increased attack. On the body armor, look for critical strike rating. If you can't get that and you have some good substats on another piece, you can also use increased attack damage. On the planar sphere, the best in slot is increased quantum damage, but a second best is increased attack. It's not too bad, but it is quite a damage loss. Look for that quantum damage if possible. On the link rope, you absolutely want increased attack, as it's pretty much the only good option. Overall, try and get the stats that I mentioned there, but you can mix and match where needed. The best in slot set for Seele is going to be a 4-piece Genius of Brilliant Stars, the Quantum set. It grants 10% increased quantum damage as well as 10% defense shred when you attack any enemy with the 4-piece. When you're attacking a quantum enemy specifically though that are weak to quantum, it does 20% defense penetration, which is very, very strong, one of the best sets in the game. Her best in slot planar set is going to be the Space Sealing Station, granting a 24% increased attack. It's worth noting that going for set bonuses over primary stats is not advisable. Get those main stats done and set, and then work into the sets as you need and can. If you're looking and struggling a little bit for sets though, you can also use the Musketeer of Wild Wheat, or you can mix and match Musketeer of Wild Wheat with the Genius of Brilliant Stars using a 2-piece of Musket and a 2-piece of Genius, and that will work out just fine. After you get into the super duper endgame and you have your 4-piece and all of this sort of stuff sorted out, you can then get into substats, and they will be a drastic damage increase to your Seele. The substats you're looking for are as follows. The best substats for Seele are critical strike rating and critical strike damage. When considering these, you want about 1% critical strike rating to every 2% critical strike multiplier that you have on your character. Although you don't have to worry too much about this, it's just a general rule of thumb, and if you see that you're a little bit low on crit or a little bit low on critical strike multiplier, you can try and prioritize one or another on pieces of gear that you're choosing to upgrade her with. Of course, after that, you can also get increased attack percentage, and maybe if you need to, you can also grab a little bit of speed as a 4th option. Next up, let's break down Seele's light cones with hard numbers. So on the screen here, you're going to see some calculations that I've cooked up for all of the light cones damaging potentials in a 8-turn rotation in a normal Forgotten Hall encounter over the course of a level 80 fight. And what you're seeing here is going to be Eidolon 0 and Eidolon 2. Eidolon 0 is what many players are going to be playing Seele at, and it is the most accessible, but Eidolon 2 is for those spenders who want to get a little bit more out of the character and are interested in going for a bit more investment, and we'll cover that in a second here. But those are the 2 different graphs here, and we're going to break down each of these and talk a little bit about what the best cones are for free-to-play, as well as spenders. We're going to talk about the best ones in both categories. So for you spenders, the best by a massive margin, even at Superimposition 1, is in the Knight. It wins by a country mile, it was built for her, and it shows. It is very, very strong, and picking up just 1 copy is going to substantially increase Seele's performance at Eidolon 0, but also even more so if you ended up with her at Eidolon 2. Not much to say here, you guys can take a read of the effect on these cones for yourself to really understand, but it's fair to say that this one really does play out exceptionally well, and there is nothing that comes close. Next up, as another paying option, we have Sleep Like the Dead. It is in 2nd place here in both Eidolon 0 and Eidolon 2 Seele builds, and it is pretty damn strong. It might read a little bit confusingly, but overall it is going to be pretty effective, and it does have a pile of stats, making it a pretty effective option here. But a big reason why it's so good is the base attack, so you can definitely expect to see other hunt cones coming out, and even ones on this list potentially outperforming it in some scenarios. Definitely nowhere near as good as in the Night either. Alright, for our first free-to-play option, and something that is very respectable here, and one that doesn't show off its true potential on the damage charts here, we have Cruising in the Stellar Sea. You can get this as a free-to-play player and superimpose it all the way up to level 5 without paying a dime from Herder's shop, and it's just going to take a few weeks. Once you have it though, you have it. And the thing about this light cone is it almost feels like it's a secondary cone built for Seele. Let's break it down as it is the best free-to-play option. It gives you a ton of base crit, which is welcome, and it also gives you additional crit when enemies are below 50% HP. This is going to come a lot when you're playing Seele, as you want to use Seele to get the last hit on enemies, and you can easily get a more likely critical strike with this cone active when you're going for that last hit and they're a little bit low on life. So that's definitely going to help you out a lot there and boost your damage even on later and more endgame fights. When you're considering the other portion of the light cone here, it says that whenever you get a kill, you get increased attack by 40% for 2 turns at Superimposition 5. This is great because Seele is a sweeper, she's a hyper carry, she's going to be getting all the kills for herself, so you can expect to have this buff up quite a substantial amount of time. Very, very good. It is a fantastic pick, and I would say it's the best free-to-play option for Seele if you're not interested in picking up in the night or you ended up getting Sleep Like the Dead. Now, if you don't want to go for the Herder's Shop one here, or you're using it on another character, the next best option is either going to be Only Silence Remains or River Flows in the Spring. Numerically, River Flows in the Spring is best, but it is conditional. Now, for more people who are generalists, who don't want to use the Herder's Shop one, Only Silence Remained is up next as the next competitive option. It grants increased attack, which is fantastic, and it also will grant increased critical strike rating if there are 2 or fewer enemies on the field. This is incredibly easy to achieve with Seele, as you're able to clean up all of the weaker monsters on the field with her resurgence procs and her triggers, so you can really isolate 2 targets fairly quickly, and there's never really 3 powerful targets on the field, and if you were, you would be able to burn one down pretty quick in order to get in range of Only Silence Remains, making it a very competitive option in terms of damage. Alright, let's talk a little bit about teams for Seele here. First and foremost, the 2 main characters which are really great for Seele are Ting Young and Bronya. As mentioned earlier, she would love to be a hyper carry, someone who soaks up the team's resources and does all of the fighting herself. Due to her reset mechanics, this is pretty effective. Ting Young is a great support, giving a mountain of damage. When you're using her with Seele, use her blessing skill on her and alternate between using the blessing on Seele and using basic attacks. This will create a neutral skill point playstyle, meaning all of the other skill points from the rest of the team can go towards Seele. So Ting Young is going to be great. Use that ultimate on cooldown as well on Seele, and situationally if you need it on the healer. Bronya is another great support for Seele. Seele is incredibly greedy and hungry when it comes to skill points because of that incredible speed and those resurgence procs. So of course we need a lot of skill points, and Bronya brings a mountain of them, making her a great accompaniment for Seele. Even if you end up in a scenario where you have too many skill points and you're approaching the 5 skill point cap, you can just use Bronya's skill to consume them and give Seele extra actions, removing that as a downside. Overall, Bronya also has a great ultimate to boost Seele, so this is what is called and referred to as the hyper carry comp for Seele, enabling her to really unlock her full potential and sweep entire fields of monsters single-handedly. This is going to be a good team for Forgotten Hall and time-related and restricted content. However, it completely forgoes all defense. It does have a healer, but it's not very tanky. If you're in an endurance fight like Simulated Universe or a really hard boss, this won't be a very good team, but when you need damage and that's it, this can be a pretty good option. Now, when you don't want to go full all in on defense and you're ready to give up a bit of damage, you can sub out your Bronya support for a different skill point generator, Trailblazer Fire for example, or a Japad, and that will substantially increase your defense, and you'll still retain the best damage multiplying support for Seele, Ting Young. And your skill point should still be pretty good. As long as you get a bit of speed on Natasha and Trailblazer, Seele should pretty much be able to use most of her skills most of the time, and you should be well on your way to dealing a modest amount of damage, as well as having a good defensive lineup here. Next, we can see that we swap out our Ting Young in favor of a more balanced team featuring 2 damage dealers. You might want to consider doing this when you need a break effect team, something that needs to take advantage of dealing wind weakness or where quantum isn't very effective for breaking. This is a team which is focused more on breaking enemies. You can use Dan or you can use Serval, you can use any character in this slot, but when you do use them, you're going to want to have them use their skill and basic alternating so that Seele can still soak up the majority of the skill points generated by your 2 supporting characters. So in this case, Dan would use skill, basic, and in some cases, if Seele really needs skill points, he might just be using his basic exclusively, so that she can really take advantage of her resurgence triggers. Next and finally, we have a similar team here consisting not of Dan but of Arlen. Arlen is a character that uses no skill points, meaning Seele can of course still soak up the majority of what the team's got going on here. But we're showcasing Pella here as she is also a pretty damn good support who can go along Seele here. Definitely not the best compared to Ting Young and Bronya, but definitely not bad either, and a pretty good option if you don't get your hands on Bronya. Alright, last but not least, let's cover Seele's Eidolons for all you dedicated Seele fans. Now, I'm going to flash some numbers up on here, and you guys can see exactly how much damage you're going to get from Eidolon to Eidolon. Now, all this was calculated using our normal calculations and relics we discussed earlier, and it's got the only silence remains light cone equipped at superimposition 1. So first and foremost, let's take a look at her Eidolon 1 here. It's looking to give her a roughly 7% more damage over Eidolon 0. It's going to increase her crit by 15% when an enemy is 80% or lower in terms of their HP. So this is a massive damage multiplier for Seele in the right scenarios. Overall, it's going to be really great and give you a ton of crit. If you have a massive crit multi-support like Bronya, this is going to be really good to have, and it's going to juice up your team substantially. But just by herself, it's nothing crazy, and you also need to be very careful when using Herder's light cone, for example, that you don't accidentally overcap your crit. In the case that you feel like you might be, you can swap out your chest for an attack chest or a critical strike multiplier chest. However, this is definitely going to be on a case-by-case basis. The next Eidolon, Dancing Butterfly, here is by far her most powerful Eidolon, which is accessible and not super duper deep. Dancing Butterfly is going to allow her speed buff to stack twice, which ends up resulting in a 22% more damage bonus from Eidolon 1. Now this is actually an even more powerful damage bonus if you have her signature light cone. So if you were looking to maximize Seele's potential without absolutely mortgaging your house, well, you can go ahead and pick up Eidolon 2 as well as her signature light cone at superimposition 1, and that is the best stopping point to get the most out of the character. A very, very powerful bonus. Eidolon 3 is going to upgrade her skill and talent level, resulting in 8% more damage over Eidolon 2. Eidolon 4 here allows her to basically turn into a kill streak machine. When we're talking about her combo earlier, she can get 4 kills chained back to back. With the Eidolon 4 here, she can actually take that up to 6 kills back to back, giving her a combo of skill, ultimate skill, skill, ultimate skill. Due to the fact that you are able to recharge an additional 30 energy here, well, if you're doing that, you're going to be getting all those extra actions, turning her into a sweeping machine. Obviously, no direct damage increase though on her single target. Eidolon 5 is only roughly a 3% damage increase over Eidolon 4 and 3, definitely nothing too crazy there. And Eidolon 6 is a complete different kettle of fish here, which would require its own video. But it's fair to say that it completely changes the functionality of Seele and turns her into a completely different beast, and something that would need a lot of discussion. You would need to build entire teams around this effect. If you're interested in more, check out my on-hit effect video, which I'll link down in the description, and that should give you a pretty good idea of how to use this Eidolon. Alright, well that was an absolute blast. Seele is a character which I feel is going to be a ton of fun to have on your account long term, and looks to be so powerful that I feel like I personally am going to have to pull her on release. She is an excellent hyper carry, and she is, despite having insane single target, got the capability of dealing massive AoE effects with her resurgence triggers. Unless they release another character with resets, I think that she's got a place in everyone's heart well and truly into the future. And as they release even more powerful Harmony characters, her ability to snapshot buffs and extend windows is probably only going to get stronger and stronger. Overall, hopefully you guys have enjoyed my Seele guide, and until next time, cheers. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more.